I just turned it off. Okay, Lindsay, we're ready.
City Council wants to say something.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the December 2nd Planning Commission meeting. It looks like we have a full panel today. Let's see, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead, after which Dwight Whitaker will lead us in a prayer. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our beloved eternal heavenly Father, as we bow before thee this night as a planning council and commission and citizens here of the good city of North Logan, we're grateful for the privilege and opportunity which we have to assemble together to express our opinions and to review those things that are needful for adjustments and corrections. And we're grateful for the freedoms and liberties we do enjoy, for the opportunity which we have to assemble. We're grateful at this time of the year as we begin to celebrate the birth of thy son, that we might have thy spirit to guide us and direct us and help us as we move forward. We might make those decisions that would be in the best interest of our long-term objectives and for the benefit of all citizens concerned. We thank thee again for all the blessings we do enjoy in this great valley, and pray thy spirit to continue to guide us and direct us. In the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Move that we adopt tonight's agenda of December 2nd, 2021.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. And we will be approving the minutes of our previous planning commission at a later meeting. Spencer, do we have any follow-up on issues from our previous meetings?
The only follow-up item will be discussed more thoroughly in agenda items 1 and 2. It's the Hidden Hollow rezone that was not approved from RE5 to RE1 by the City Council and was sent back with a couple of ideas for the Planning Commission we'll be discussing tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, then we will start with our first item of business, a public hearing to receive input on modifying the North Logan City Code, Title 12 land use with regards to allowances, density determinants, density bonus within the RE5 zone within the following 12C-1003 area width and yard regulations and 12D-200 residential subdivision methods and regulations. Okay, so Spencer, can you give us some background on this?
Yeah, I'll give a little background and overview on the code changes and also the reason as a whole behind it. So this parcel here, 18-0060004, James Maloof parcel, has come before the Planning Commission several times in concept and in rezone, and went to City Council last meeting. Like I said, that was not approved to be rezoned from RE5 to RE1. However, the City Council did express that they would like to find a path forward, just not by rezoning to the RE1 zone. So these first two agenda items are looking at 2 or 3 potential paths forward involving both some minor ordinance changes and potentially a rezone. Basically, you can pick a path that you want to go on, but all of them may not involve both of those things, essentially. So it's this parcel. The RE5 zone in general, just to highlight that, is only one area of the city. And I'll pull it up and highlight it here. It's a little difficult to see because the color is similar to what the RE1 zone is. But you can see labeled on here on the map, this RE5. This is the only area in the city that is the RE5 zone. And that essentially means residential estate, single family, 5-acre lot minimum. So that's primarily what we're dealing with. RE2 is in the same vein. Residential estate 2 acre, RE1 is the one that was not approved to go to is 1 acre. So with that, I'll switch into those code changes and kind of the different options. So the 3 options that were outlined essentially were, 1, to change the RE5 zone. Right now it's stipulated that the density cannot include any non-buildable land, which essentially is land with slopes greater than 30% in your density calculations. So to adjust that so that the non-buildable land would be allowed to be included only for the RE5 zone. This would impact a minimal amount of land and would essentially help this project go forward. I'll pull up the code for this here. So the way this would be written in this draft would be, this is the line here. So the total acres in the parcel less any non-buildable area. That is the line that when this was rezoned RE5, that was the line that the applicant or the landowner was not aware of. So they thought they were going to be able to have 5 or 6 lots, which was about half or less from the 10 to 15 that they were going to originally. Instead, with this line of code, they're only able to have about 2 lots. So if there's a stipulation written in that says in the RE5 zone alone, the total acres in the parcel, including any non-buildable area, that would allow them to have 6 lots per the density calculations. So that's one option that would not require a rezone. The other option that would not require a rezone would be to change so when you calculate the density for how many lots are allowed, this is our density determinant subdivision. There's a coefficient here in this row that's determined by the minimum lot size and the assumed portion that's taken up for roads. If you change that coefficient, they would be able to get the 7 lots they're looking for. I don't recommend this method though. It's essentially changing a number without changing the formula, and I don't think it's a good practice. So this one I'm less in favor of. It is an option that would work. The third option is to change and rezone the area to the RE2 zone. So it wouldn't go down to the RE1 density. It would go to RE2. With that, they could do the standard subdivision, which means every lot has to be a minimum of 2 acres, in which case the non-buildable stipulation doesn't apply. The only issue they had with that limited this being a possibility was the required width of each lot was to be 250 feet. If we dropped that down to 100 feet and rezoned to RE2, they would be able to get 7 lots, sorry, with the layout possible. We do have some other areas of RE2 in the city. They are already built. There's no open land in RE2, and the lots that are built on those are about 130 feet wide. So this is very similar to what's already built and would match our RE1 zone. So those are kind of the 3 options that the city council requested the planning commission look at. Just a brief overview.
What's the reasoning behind why choose the 100 number in the width right there? Where did we come up with that 100? Right.
100 is a pretty typical width within subdivisions. It's also the width that's required if you develop using density determinant.
Okay.
And it's a pretty typical building lot that allows enough room for a building on there. I just went based on our other code and other zones and the density
that's a
determinant.
minimum lot width.
Minimum. So they
Okay.
could be wider than that. It's just the minimum.
Okay. Should we go, do you guys want to discuss it, or should we open it up to the public hearing and then discuss what? Okay, let's hearing. Okay, so we will open this up to a public hearing. I will give you the instructions for speaking at a public hearing. Before you begin, state your name for the record, speak into the microphone so your comments can be recorded. Limit your statements to 2 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of others, you may ask the chairman for more time. Please phrase your opinions in the form of statements, not questions. A public hearing is your opportunity to express your opinions to the planning commission, not a time to ask questions and expect dialogue. Please address your comments to the commission, not to the public. The commission may ask questions about your comments in order for them to better understand you. If you have questions or need to discuss an issue, meet with the planning commission members or appropriate city staff before the public hearing. And then you may provide a written statement as your input for a hearing. You may read your entire statement or summarize it. The 2-minute limit applies. Okay, so with that, we'll open it up to the public hearing.
Thank you, Barbara Middleton, and thank you for sending out the agenda, although I gotta say, I don't understand all those code numbers sometimes, and it's not always the easiest thing to access it on the web page if you're trying to come in with some information. So thanks for explaining some of that, Spencer. My question on the part that's already up on the screen, jumping from RE1 to RE5, we're going from 100 to 300, and I don't understand why RE2 would be okay at 100. It might be typical, but I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's much too large of a jump, and I think that needs to be a different look. So I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you, Barbara.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Alexis Alt, and I am a professor in the Department of Geosciences at USU. I've stood here before and spoken to you all. I'm here again to express my reservations and deep concerns for any of these proposed changes to the zone of this particular parcel of land. At the core, this rezone represents the first step to approving development of that land. And underlying these concerns are fundamental and first order concerns about the safety of this development and the sustainability of North Logan City resources. So there are questions that I have about the road, about water infrastructure, how pipelines will be carried across not one, but 2 significant drainages, as well as an additional road that's part of this subdivision. And in addition to that, you know, all of this comes at the expense of the altercation to the natural landscape, significant dirt removal and altercation of the national land or the natural landscape. And so, you know, the last thing I'll say is that I attended the city council meeting, and I was really alarmed by the nature of the discussion there that did not accurately represent the concerns that you all have about the water delivery to not just this subdivision, right? But all of the homes that are up there on the bench. What was not covered was the water storage takes that are planned, or the well that's going to go in at the entrance to Green Canyon. Those things don't exist yet. And the viability of water going to this subdivision hinges on that. There's a small tank that could provide water, but you all had those concerns and they were not accurately conveyed to the city council. And so I just, from a number of perspectives, think that even the rezone represents a challenging path forward for something that, you know, potentially could just remain natural. Thanks.
Thanks, Alexis.
Hello, my name is Dennis Newell. I'm also a resident of North Logan City and live adjacent to this parcel. You know, I'm just want to comment that after listening to what was presented about these proposed zoning changes, I mean, I, of course, didn't have a chance to review these ahead of time to understand what was going on. But my impression is that, you know, this was sent back down here because they did not want to go from RE5 to RE1. And it seems like the proposals put forth are slightly, I don't want to use maybe the word contrived is wrong, but he did mention that he didn't want to change the multiplication factor just because it didn't seem like the right thing to do. These other changes seem a little bit like that too. They're a little bit arbitrary, that we're changing the width of this and to RE2 to essentially achieve the same thing that changing to RE1 would have changed. And so to me, it's just, we're just changing a few things to get to the same conclusion. So that's my concern.
Thanks, Mr. Newell.
Hi, I'm Dave Flandro. I'm a resident here in North Logan. Can you hear me okay on the mic? Okay, thank you. One of the things that we often forget, in my opinion, is that when we take the role of serving the public, your primary role is that of safety. And I think some of my concerns is that even though there's land there and it may be owned by a homeowner, putting a practical amount of homes on that area is starting to borderline on being an unsafe environment. That's not to say you can't build a house on the edge of a cliff, but I am suggesting that we're starting to flirt with an area that is geologically speaking, is starting to get pretty steep up there. That's the first thing. So I'd like you to consider as a commission that the role of safety in the community. Secondly, the water element is a key element. And doing a little research with the Utah State Department of Water, I've noted that there's been several, 3 anyway, that I can recall, wells that ended up being dug that ended up being dry. Those are very expensive situations. And so we are basing our decisions based on having a well. Just because we think we're going to drop a well, there's an assumption that there's going to be water there. And if there's not, even though we've got good people at the university teaching how to make these things to get water in these wells and so forth, there's still an element of risk in that. And so therefore, by granting a rezone like this and allowing even more demand on an element that is not known, I think it borders lines on being a little irresponsible. As I said to my wife, it might be the opinion that there's plenty of checks in the checkbook. We'll just do it and hopefully there'll be money in the account.
All right,
So
you're at your 2 minutes.
okay, thank you. So those are just some of the concerns that I have regarding this rezone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flandro.
Follow up on that, if I
Okay.
could. Dave, when you said the 3 wells, were those all 3 in North Logan? And if so, what was the time frame for those?
Thank you for the question. If I recall correctly, they happened about 7 years ago. 2 of the 3, one was in Hyde Park near the canyon, and then 2 along the foothills, similar location to where this property line is on the east side. Now, that's from my recollection, but I did do some homework because I was being a realtor. I'm interested in knowing what's happening with the water.
I do know that it was the case in Hyde Park, that they dug
Yeah.
a well that was
That
very.
it was dry
underproduced.
and it's
Alan, maybe
expensive.
you could speak to that.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm Joni Karchner, and I have concerns after going up and walking the area and visiting with Alexis, sorry. My biggest concern, and maybe this would be something that you guys could consider too, is the slipament that's up there and the geomorphic hazards that are up there. Those are huge concerns that I have from areas where I've lived before. So I would take that into some serious consideration, as well as that we still only have honestly one way in and one way out. So I'd like to leave that with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Karchner. Do we have any other public input at this time? Okay, then I will close the public hearing and we can begin the discussion amongst the panel. I think we can begin by taking option 2 off the table. I think I agree with you that unless anyone has any opposition to that, I think that that's a bad idea. And I think just overall, I am concerned about taking a specific action that applies hereafter, even though it only applies to, you know, the RE5 zoned property. I'm concerned about taking an action that's specific to a situation. I just think that's a bad motivation for changing an ordinance. So that concerns me. I understand the reasoning behind it, but that's just kind of where I am right now with it. I'd love to hear everyone else's
Yeah.
thoughts.
Totally agree. Like you say, I think when you're trying to make a change, you're trying to make something that makes sense. But granted, if there's something that's obviously out of line, then you say, okay, let's correct that. But I don't see that with this situation. And as I look at those and say, yeah, I would say the same thing. I would not change the formula. Why do you change that for one zone versus all the others? And I don't know if we want to go, you know, issue by issue on these of the 3, Lindsay. The things that I'm hearing that resonate with me again are, I'm concerned the further up on a hill you go, I think the more liability the city takes on. And if something goes wrong, then the recourse is, well, the city allowed us to do this. And so I'm still very uncomfortable. I don't think that any more houses than are already allowed should go up there. And so just as a baseline, I guess that's still where I am. I've not heard anything from the last time that we went through this that has changed my mind on that particular issue.
Just a point of order, Spencer. I know that you got an email that I failed to read into the public hearing minutes. We can remedy that now.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Let's see. I'll see if I can pull that up here. And I got an email from her too. I will read yours into the record. Thank you for your time today. My husband, Chris, and I would like to voice our opinions that we do not support the development of either of these properties. If you would, yeah, okay, that's the relevant portion of the email, just so that we're acting in accordance with what we tell the residents that we'll do. All right. Yeah, sure.
Just a note on that one. That one actually is for subdivision in agenda item 3.
Oh, okay.
So that one is not applicable to this one. I don't know if they're
number 3.
agenda item 3. Yeah, the subdivision for later down the list on a different parcel.
Oh, good to know. Okay.
Yep, I
We'll look
apologize
forward
for
to hearing it again.
Well, they oppose that. And is okay. Sorry then.
My concern is water also. I think that we dance around the issue, but it's a big issue. And I hate to vote on something that might happen. Hopefully it happens. So that's a
Nice closer.
that's one of my concerns.
Dwight, Jeff?
Yeah, I haven't changed from my feelings from a few weeks ago. I don't like changing the code to try and make something fit. I'm sensitive to city council members that were involved in the planning commission when this decision was made before. I get it, but I don't think it's the right decision to try and shoehorn it through on account of that. My concerns are water and safety, and I'm afraid that those things need to be addressed before we consider anything happening up there.
Dwight? Any thoughts?
Spencer, what was the first option again?
Yeah, I'll go back to that. So it's this line in the code. So this is with regards to density determinant and density bonus subdivisions. The line in here that says it's the total acres. So that formula that I showed with that coefficient, the total acres in the parcel less any non-buildable area. So buildable area in this, for this particular subdivision, they've got 30.86 acres total. on this parcel. 10.44 of that is buildable. So using this non-buildable, if you subtract it out, they can have 2 lots in the current zone. If you don't subtract that out, so this first one is adding a line that says in the RE5 zone specifically, you don't have to subtract out the non-buildable. They could have 6 lots. So it's 1 less than we had thought originally. The reasoning behind this and really the changes, and Alan can kind of correct me if I'm wrong. I wasn't at that city council meeting. I was in bed under 7 blankets, trying to stay warm with 103 fever. But the reason behind that is when this road went through this area, all this area that's RE5, there was a plan in place that had 45 plus lots that connected this 2350 east down here up to Meadowlark Lane up here. And that was a master planned road. As they went into that plan, that road crossed several drainages as has been mentioned, and was just not feasible financially. So the applicants came in and requested that road in the master plan be removed. As part of that being removed, they agreed to reduce their density. So we didn't end up with the same density just on 2 cul-de-sacs. That was the main issue. At that time, it was the understanding of the applicant and honestly the staff, we hadn't seen that one line that changes from 6 to 2, that there would be about 6 lots on the bottom and about 3 lots on the top end of this. So the reason city council sends that back, just for the information of everybody here and the planning commission, is to change the code to be more in line with what the applicant had initially thought and understood when that density was changed. So that making that non-buildable count, and that would be only for the RE5 zone, which again is only this area, would do that.
I think one of the points that were brought up in city council was that initially this was zoned R1.
Correct.
And the applicant or the prior owners, whatever the case may be, agreed with the city to go to R5. Is that correct? RE5?
Correct.
Any more details on that by way of information?
Yes, and the trade-off there was that the road then went away. So that eliminated a large cost for them not having to put the road in. But also just infrastructure-wise, it's not good for the city to have that many lots around 2 cul-de-sacs. So the trade-off was going a lower density. And again, at the time, their understanding, without seeing that non-buildable, less the non-buildable area line, was they were going to be able to get 5 to 6 lots. With that line, that dropped to 2. And that's why there's a little bit of a surprise there for them.
Okay. And with the issue of water and drilling, the 2 wells that were mentioned, were those within the city of North Logan? Those were not within the city of North Logan, outside the city boundaries. Okay. And based on best projections, there will be access to water. There could be, best we know. Yeah.
We don't know.
Is there money in the account?
Marie's going to send you to the mic.
Just going over that, we've kind of talked about water the last few meetings. Alan Luce.
Thank you.
A city worker. In this area, we've talked about the water concerns. There are major concerns regarding water throughout the area, both the cost, the distribution, and the redundancy in lines is really what we're looking at here in getting water to this area. The city's obviously working through plans. There is always some risk in drilling wells and looking for sources. Now, past several ones we've drilled, we've been very successful in getting water, but there is a risk in any time. There is a risk in not knowing that. We haven't started that now. We've started applying for funding in order to be able to do that. We've already done a geology study on that. that says there is water in the area that we're looking at drilling. We are looking at putting in 2 more reservoirs in this area as well, very large reservoirs. And so we're working through that process. But like you said, those aren't done right now. They're not finished, but we are looking through that process in order to get water and correct some of the water concerns throughout the entire city. Not just addressing it here, it helps throughout the entire city as a whole. But really addressing this area and providing one thing in this subdivision, if it does go through, provides a redundant line up to the upper tank to the subdivision.
Do you have a sense of when we'll know about that well?
Probably in early spring is when the funding is the 2 sources of funding we're looking at right now and applying for simultaneously. We'll know at that time, and then at that time we'll start drilling test wells shortly after that and drill the actual well.
Okay.
So Alan, regardless of our actions tonight, the city will move forward on developing.
Oh yeah, regardless of what.
Additional water supply that would benefit this particular project, but also would benefit the entire city.
That's a good point, Dwight. Yes, absolutely. Regardless of whatever happens with this subdivision, we are going full steam ahead and looking for those other water sources.
Right. Thank you.
So something that we often hit on is the safety of just the slope, I guess, stability of that, just that area. Is that something that would be addressed potentially by the developer in doing geological studies? My understanding is that's not necessarily on us to make a determination of whether the actual orientation of the land is conducive to homes. Is that correct?
Right. So yeah, there was a geotechnical study completed for this as part of the Canyon Ridge subdivision as a whole. They dug several large extensive trenches as part of that. There would be an additional follow-up site specific to this that would be recommended to be required with the subdivision. We would get that report in the development plan of a subdivision should one be put in after, if this is rezoned or changed. That's when we would see that. But yes, we would get additional information in the future.
And I think that this is covered with design standards. I mean, we limit slopes that can be built on, and so there's standards in place to govern and guide that. Just as a point of clarification. So it's not just going to be, if it does go ahead, it's just not free reign. There's still all the design standards that would have to be followed in the development.
So just exploring another option with this in changing to an RE2, but reducing the width, the minimum lot width. What would that look like if we were to say put it at 200 minimum width?
Yeah, and it gets tricky with the width because it comes down to having somebody had drawn it. You really have to draw it to know based on the road. So I may have to have Nick step up, and I don't know if he tested 200 or if 100 is bare minimum or what that looks like.
Yeah.
Nick Porter, I'm the developer on this project. Yeah, on the east side, we've drawn 3 1-acre buildable pads, and those right now are like 150, 160 foot frontages. So 200 would reduce the number of lots we could get there. We'd have to drop a lot on the east side. So we'd have 2 on the east, and then the cul-de-sac, depending on, cul-de-sacs get tricky. Each city's different. I haven't, to be honest, looked into North Logan. But basically, if you think about a cul-de-sac, you've got a narrow little stretch here. I know in Logan, they go to the middle of the lot and then measure your 200 foot frontage there. I don't know.
It's measured from the front setback. So yeah, you'd go back, and I think the front setback in the RE2 density determinant, I believe, is 30. I think standard maybe 50. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at the table, but it's measured from wherever that setback is. You take that arc length.
So just ballparking, I think we get two on the east and two on the west. It'd probably be like a 4-lot subdivision if you zoned it to R2, but didn't change the 100-foot frontage. I will say, one thing I want to point out, there's 3 methods to determine lots in North Logan. One of the methods has 100-foot frontages for R1, R2, and R5. Another method says 100, 200, and 300. So there's already within the code, there's it's not consistent.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions for Nick? Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
I guess I find myself in a position that feels familiar with regard to this subdivision, which is that, I feel like there are still a lot of variables that are out there that I would feel uncomfortable making any of these 3 changes, just based on my knowledge right now, because there is some guesswork as to, how many lots. That's kind of, I think we're working backward a little bit to say, let's make sure that you can have the number of lots that would make this a viable project for you. I don't really want to work from there. It's almost like walking into a car dealership and they say, how much monthly payments can you afford? And I think overall we need to decide whether we can afford development in general, not so much say, how can we fit this into existing ordinances, or how can we adjust the ordinances to fit the circumstance that we want to end up with. So Spencer, just help me out here. Tonight, the action that we're taking is a recommendation to city council in all 3 of these scenarios. Is that what we're doing tonight, is making a recommendation?
Yeah, you could make a recommendation on all 3. You could make it a positive recommendation on 1, negative recommendation on 2. You could do multiple positives. If you feel like there's multiple different options, you could go negative recommendation on all 3. Some need a rezone, some don't. Obviously, if you decide you're okay with both, the RE5 change, the RE2 code changed, and you want to have a positive recommendation to the RE2 zone change as well, you can kind of mix and match
Okay.
for all 3 of these.
What was the request from the city council? Was it just send it back? Was it figure out a way to make it work? What was the request from city council?
I may have Alan step up again if that's okay, because he was at that meeting. I didn't hear it. If that's all right, Alan.
Get the guy his own mic.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. They looked at several different options. At the time, they were hesitant to rezone back to RE1, not because of the subdivision itself or what would come from that, but primarily because of the open-endedness of what could happen if this developer sold it to another developer or anything else happens in the future. And they weren't comfortable with that, so they requested that it go back to the planning commission to explore the 2 options. One, looking at the RE5 and adding the line that Spencer has talked about regarding the non-buildable open space being counted towards a bonus density or density determinant. And then also looking at the RE2 option, which hadn't been explored by the city council or the planning commission at that time, to my knowledge.
It had not. Yeah.
And that was really just the 2 directives, if that's an accurate summary, Nick, and you can probably let me know if there's something else I'm missing.
And Alan, while you're there, I had the opportunity to zoom in on that meeting, that particular meeting, and that specific discussion. The sense was that the city city council wanted to try to work something out with the developer moving forward. And I think the developer has demonstrated his willingness to do whatever necessary to try to put something together and within reasonable guidelines. So is that
That's a
correct
very
assumption?
fair assessment. That's the assessment I got. The overarching concerns were not with what the subdivision would look like based off of the previous proposals. It was really with the precedent with code changes and everything else regarding RE1. That was the biggest concern that they had. Again, they didn't fit into everything, but that was the major concern.
Were the other thing, I mean, was the entire concept presented to city council? I mean, what's their take on the water and?
They didn't go over water and everything else at that time because it's a concept plan. So they discuss it, they know about it, they talk about it. But really at this point, they're looking at the lot configuration and the road layout for a concept plan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there a way to convey that? Because I think I also zoomed into that meeting. And I think it seems like the two bodies are considering entirely a different set of facts. I think zoning is one aspect that we're considering, you know, and but I think like all of us have brought up, I think we all still have those concerns. And I know, Nick, I feel like we've beat this dead horse over and over, but I think we do still have the concerns about water. I think we do still have the concerns about the slope, which we've discussed somewhat. But I guess that's where I am, is that I feel like you know, city council I think they do, just by nature of the bodies, have a different set of considerations, but I just don't know that enough has changed with the planning commission that we're in a position to make these sorts of changes. I think maybe what we can do is at least make a motion as to the second option. We know that that's not a route that we're going to go. So I would entertain a motion on that one, the RE2 zone.
That was
Wait, no, sorry, that's not the one. It was the third option, RE5 zone density calculations. So I would entertain a motion on that item specifically. Let's just get that one out of the way.
All right, let's,
That's this one.
So
Is it the
we've
sec-
all kind of
yeah.
said, we don't want to do that. So we can make a negative recommendation.
was
on
this
that
the
one.
second or third option?
It was the third, right?
This was the second.
Second? All
Option,
Second,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
right, so.
So I think for
Alan.
sure we're against that. I think we're kind of against everything else too at this point. Because we don't have enough.
Assurance, right?
Yeah, we hate to vote on something that maybe this will happen down the road. I think that's probably what happened to get this problem in the first place. So that's my concern. I don't want to vote a yay on something that will, hopefully this will happen. And so we're going to vote for that. But
Okay, so we can, Nan has rejected my option of splitting them up.
I'll
Is
second that.
out of order,
Jeff.
gentlemen.
Die.
So if the commission is ready to vote on all three, I'm happy to entertain a motion. That is my job up here. So make an actual motion and we will entertain it.
are we ready?
And my actual purpose is to just make sure we've got all the discussion and all the facts out, both from
Okay.
citizens and also from the developer and the perspective of the city council, so that we can make indeed an informed decision here tonight.
Okay, so if we can, let's make a negative, I would suggest that we make a negative recommendation as to changing the density calculations for density determinant subdivisions. I think we all agree that that's a bad idea.
This one.
Specifically this one on the
Yeah.
screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion on that one. Let's clear that one out of consideration.
I would so move.
Okay, so Dwight has moved that we make a negative recommendation as to changing the zone density calculations for the RE5 zone.
Second.
Okay, Eric seconds, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Dwight, my sense is that you would consider one of the other two options. Is there one that you prefer between the remaining two options? Make the RE5 zone include the non-buildable land, or make changes to the RE2 zone? So rezone it to RE2 and then reduce the minimum lot width.
To be clear, the rezone would be in the next agenda item.
Okay,
Next
so this
public
would
hearing.
just be
This would
altering
just be the lot
RE2
width.
lot
Yep,
widths.
there's
Okay.
another public hearing for the
Is there,
rezone.
is there one between the two that you would consider?
The RE2, I'm still kind of uncomfortable with the frontage,
Mhm.
100 feet there, but yeah.
Okay, so how about if we take an action on allowing non-buildable land to be used in density calculations? Are we comfortable making a negative recommendation on that?
Yeah, just one other thought to put on top of that. I think when you have non-buildable land, there's a reason it's non-buildable, and that again makes me more concerned. When you have that type of an area, to then start including that in buildable land makes me feel like we're crowding and pushing the edges and putting, again, the city in a spot where anything that does and could go wrong, there's liability for. And so to me, that's why I guess I look at that and I'm against that, because I think it pushes us too far.
Okay, so are we ready to make a motion on that? On the changing the RE5 zone to allow non-buildable land?
So our motion is.
And you can
Nay?
reference the ordinance
Yeah.
as presented on the screen if
Okay.
you don't want to try to pick out the language.
Okay,
Right. So what is the
Get the words
motion?
Together.
we make a
So I-
recommendation that we. Okay,
Yeah, I'll make a motion for a negative recommendation towards modifying the language in the existing code. Now I gotta get the right words in there.
We don't have an ordinance number till we get to city council, because,
so
yeah.
To change that.
using
To-
Spencer's language, I think is probably the easiest.
So
way
you
to
can,
go.
you can just negative recommendation for the ordinance as presented on the screen.
Okay,
So, and we'll reference that in
Alright,
the notes.
so
Marie can
make-
pull the title.
negative recommendation on the change as explained by Spencer regarding non-buildable area.
All right,
Okay,
second,
I'll second it.
Nan seconds, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, so let's discuss the final option. So Spencer, I'm wondering if we were to rezone this, just to explore this, if we were to rezone it to an RE2, but not change the frontage, would that be a purely symbolic gesture in terms of what that means for the subdivision?
It would essentially, yeah, like Nick mentioned, that would be 4 lots, so it would give him 2 more lots potentially. Yeah, that's essentially what that do. If it is rezoned to RE2, the worry with RE1 was, say this doesn't go through, development agreement isn't tight enough, somebody comes back with another plan. That was the concern from the city council. In this case, if somebody comes back with say it doesn't go through, the applicant's bound by that 100 foot. So we change it to 100 foot. The maximum lots you can get with the 100 foot is 7, and that's using the standard subdivision method. And the standard subdivision method already allows including non-buildable. That line isn't included in that. So say somebody comes in and decides to take that 30 acres, 30.86 and do density determinant. In that case, we haven't changed the non-buildable requirement for density determinant, and you'd only be able to get 5 lots in the RE2 zone. So we're a little bit protected from somebody coming in and changing a plan, a little bit more so than what the RE1 is in this case. Just wanted to make that clear. I kind of ran the numbers for the different scenarios to see how we would turn out in that situation.
Okay. I don't know, what does the commission say about that? I mean, is rezoning it to RE2, but not changing the frontage? I mean, is it even worth considering?
I think if it's not going to achieve the goals of the applicant, it's not going to fill much of a role. It would
It's just symbolic.
yeah, it wouldn't be very necessary change.
So then we have to say nay on that.
Perhaps we need to hear what the applicant has to say about that. Huh?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, right? I mean, you guys have heard me say this 100 times, but I'll say it 101 times. City council, the meat of the discussion there was you have a landowner that was approached by the city and not told all of the information. Based on that conversation, he agreed to rezone his property. Then when he comes in with an application, we dive into the code and realize in that moment, oh, there's a line in here that's going to prevent all of us from doing what we had talked about. And so for city council, there's 3 members on there at least that spoke that were either on city council or on planning commission at that time. And they don't feel good about it. Why? Because just because you can do something doesn't make it right. And that's the analogy I'm giving back to planning commission. And I agree with Lindsay. I think planning commission is one body looking at one set of things, and city council is another body looking at another set of things. And so maybe that's why there's a bit of it seems like there's a bit of disconnect between the two bodies. But I firmly believe, setting my developer hat aside, which is probably hard for me to do, right? But like, put yourself in this person's shoes. They never would have agreed to this, period. And so the city is saying, hey, we didn't tell them that. We need to fix this. And that's what we keep saying, like, set all of this aside and look at the core issue here. This was an R1 property. And I feel like you guys are using that as a mechanism to keep it there because you can, and that's fine. Like, maybe that's what you guys need to do. But city council, at least in the meeting I was in, felt completely different. And I think that's why we're coming back with these options, because R1, yeah, they didn't feel good. They don't want to do that. And that's why they said, hey, R1 leaves us open to a lot of things. Come back with a couple suggestions in R2 or R5, and we'll take a look at them.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things with that. I think that I think the concern, I think, as a commission, is that we aren't just considering zoning here. So even if this whole situation had been different, I think that you still would have been subject to that analysis of whether we have the water, whether the grade is correct, whether you, I'm still hung up on the ingress egress thing. So I totally understand it, but I think maybe the city council is considering just the zoning, and I totally understand that. I think that that's compelling to me, that the city made a representation to the landowner, and that wasn't, maybe that, I don't think either party knew at that time, although.
I totally agree with you. There was nothing malicious about it. It's just, oh, hey, we now realize this. What are we going to do about it?
Right. But I mean, from a legal standpoint, that's, the onus is on both parties to that agreement to make sure that they're entering into agreement that they fully understand. So it is unfortunate, but right, there's no malintent, and these are the facts as we are considering them. So I don't know. I mean, I hate to belabor this anymore, but I think we're where we started with this. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would entertain a motion on that third item. And I think that we can make that motion with the understanding that the city council may and will consider other factors than the planning commission is. And I'm comfortable with that. So I would entertain a motion.
Well, to get things rolling, I will make a motion that we go with the RE2 with a, I don't want to, is it minimum?
Minimum, yep.
Minimum 250 feet frontage.
So negative recommendation
That's
of
what it
the
currently is.
change.
Pardon me?
Negative recommendation of the change to 100, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
It's at 250.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it's at 250, so yes, just keep it at that. But
Okay.
yeah. So negative
Am I voting yay to a negative?
This is kind of reflecting back what Spencer said, is that we couldn't rezone it tonight, even if we wanted to RE2.
We can make it, that was also noticed as a public hearing. It's just the next agenda item down. So agenda item 2 is that rezone. So that will be another public hearing and another agenda item. They just go kind of hand in
Okay.
hand.
So let's do this. Let's motion for the negative recommendation on that, and then we can consider the rezone on the next item,
Right.
right? That's the proper order.
Right.
Okay, so Dwight, if I understand it, your motion is that we make a negative recommendation as to changing the minimum lot width in the RE2 zone.
Correct.
Okay, I would entertain a second.
I will second.
Jeff seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We will move on then to the second public hearing. To receive public input on a proposal to rezone parcel 18-006-004, approximately 28.6 acres at approximately 2350 east, 2700 north from residential estate 5 acre to residential estate 2 acre. Spencer, I think we got it. No background needed. Okay, so I will open that public hearing. The same rules apply, 2-minute time limit.
Hello, it's Dennis Newell again. I'm speaking as a North Logan City resident. And also, I'm a faculty of the geosciences at Utah State, and I live adjacent to this property. I spoke on the last motion, the set of motions regarding the specific zoning changes, and now I'd like to speak more specifically about the ramifications of rezoning this land for development. And I have a background in geochemistry, hydrogeology, those sorts of things. And I have concerns about this land and this project, just like you do in terms of water. I have concerns about the long-term water supply for North Logan City. I recognize that previous wells were drilled outside the city limits, but it's the same aquifer. And so we're going to have this problem. We're going to have it whether we do this or not. I, as a citizen, would like to be able to see more specifics about this development plan. I'd like to see the plans for making the road grade appropriate, because I can stand on that property and I can stand on the road, and I ride my bike up that road all the time. And I'd like to know how we go from that current grade to the required lower grade without substantial modifications of the landscape and of the existing driveways that are entering the road there. I'd like to see, when it happens, the hydrogeologic report for the wells for North Logan City and how we're going to, make sure we have this supply, because we just recently drilled a well. It wasn't that long ago, and we're already in need of another one. And if it comes to, I'd like to see the geotechnical report for this property, because geotechnical reports don't always identify the hazards that are present. As you may be aware, 3 lots down from where we live, there was a geotech study on the property that they're excavating to build a home. And that home is bisected by the East Cache Fault. That's a different issue. So these things aren't perfect. So that's what I'd like to say. And I'm in opposition for the rezone recommendation.
Thanks, Mr. Newell.
Alexa Salt.
Could you put the microphone closer to your
Yeah,
mouth?
totally.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Yeah, short.
Some of us are hard of hearing. So.
So Nick, I understand that you come to this wanting to develop this land, and I understand the various different dynamics here of the landowners. This particular parcel of land, and indeed homes that would eventually be at this elevation, are really challenging because of how you have to get the water from where the well is, pumping it up to the various storage tanks, 2 of which hopefully will be built if funds come through. And in addition to a number of the things that Dennis mentioned earlier, I share those concerns as I articulated in the first time I was at the microphone. I think, when people talk about the geomorphic hazards, if you look at this image, it doesn't quite convey it, but basically perched up all along the pediment surface there are massive, like close to car trunk size boulders that are there because that drainage has flowed. And so I want to understand what the pipelines are going to look like that are going to carry water that come from further to the north across that drainage. There's a second drainage even. So there's a second drainage even, and there's an elevation difference between right here and here, a significant one. I think it's about 30 feet. So I know the pipeline looks like it's going to come down and come across, but there's still an elevation difference. And so there's a lot of engineering that goes behind that. And so you guys mentioned safety and liability. And so this is sort of, there's a lot of concerns about that with regards to the development. And something I just want to end with is that, Nick, you said just because you can do something doesn't make it right. And you were referring to that about decisions everyone was making here, but that also applies to the overall what's going on with this particular development. Part of the reason of considering the rezone is because why city council put it back to you guys is because, they want to see this go forward. It was very clear sitting in that meeting. And I just hope that they recognize all of these different considerations that you're hearing about tonight. There are other parcels of land that make sense for development and sustained growth within the valley. This is not one of them. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Ms. Alt. So, sorry, is that the email? Is that?
No, that's for
that
the
third item.
third
Okay.
item. Yep.
I kind of want to read it. Okay. Ms. Middleton.
Well, you took all the wind out of my sails because I wanted to talk about geologic integrity, but here are the experts. So thank you for doing that, because that's a huge concern for me. And I think the thing I'm looking at is city council having a discussion and really wanting to try and make this work. When is it something that really can work? I agree that when you have a meeting and you have two bodies that are looking at what RE5 means and what this landscape means, there's an understanding that both parties understand what's going on, or you don't walk away from that meeting. And I think there's been clarity with that. And so miscommunication is, that just sounds a little bit shaky to me, because it's in writing and it's also been in meetings. So I'm a little worried about some of those comments that were made at the previous meeting. I do think this is really a precedent-setting decision, because you are looking at changing one zoning, one area for one particular situation that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and that really scares me. I don't think that helps us move forward with a vision for what we want the city to look like. I don't think it helps the city staff with looking at codes, or with you, your board, and also city council in what you have to weigh in your decisions. And so I'm very concerned about short-term profit versus long-term vision and principle on what we want, not only our boards and our committees to act on, but what we want to look like in the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Any other public input? Okay, then we will close the public hearing and discuss as a commission a proposed rezone from RE5 to RE2. Any new thoughts?
Just a review for me, RE5 equals how many lots?
RE5 without any code changes equals 2 lots.
It's 2. I thought it was 4.
2. RE2 without any code changes equals 4. So if with the negative recommendation to lot width, and then if it's positive recommendation of rezone, essentially the recommendation from the council is to go from 2 lots to 4 lots.
Okay.
And I guess the point is there's still going to be houses there. Potential.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, are we at a point to make a motion? We have talked about it quite a bit. Is anyone comfortable with considering the zone change to RE2?
I'm not.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we make a negative recommendation to the change from RE5 to RE2.
Okay, motion by Dwight Whitaker and any second?
I'll second.
A second by Jeff. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. All right, we will move on to the third item. Consideration and possible recommendation of a concept plan for a subdivision of approximately 12 acres located at 1800 East, 2800 North, parcels 04-050-0031 and 04-050-0099. The proposed subdivision includes 11 lots in the RE1 zone and is being proposed to be subdivided using the density determinant method. So is this another option, like a distinct option?
This is a different property.
Oh, okay.
So I'll give an overview.
The
of
answer's
this
no,
one.
Nick. Just kidding. Okay.
Yes, I'll give a little bit of context. This is a
Good focus.
completely-
Good focus,
completely
Lindsay. Good
different,
focus.
Sorry, I'm trying to just make sure we're on track.
So to get everybody situated, you've got 1600 East going through a little bit on the left-hand side. Canyon Ridge Drive comes off of 3100, and then there's Foothill Drive, where it dead ends on the south here. I'll zoom in. This property also owned by James Malouf. It's these two parcels. There's 0099 is the smaller parcel to the left. And then you've got 0031, which is the larger parcel in the middle. So those are the two parcels under consideration. Those combined equal about 12 acres. The maximum number of lots in the current zone is 11 lots. Now, just to clarify the difference between this and the last subdivision application, in that one, there's a rezone being requested, which is a legislative act. It's a change to the general plan, essentially. So there's more discretion there. This one is not requested to be rezoned. It's requested to be subdivided as zoned. So at that point, it's just verifying or ensuring that it meets the code required. I will flip over to the concept plan now and give you an idea of what that is. And Nick will have to correct me on the name. I put in Malouf subdivision that may want to be changed if we have a different name. But this up here to the top of the screen is that connection, that dead end that we saw earlier. You can see the 11 lots that are proposed, some larger than an acre, some smaller. Like was stated, this is density determinant. So the density is calculated beforehand. Then there's some flex in those size of lots down to about half acre at the minimum. So they have some 2 acres, some half acre. Now with this one, we do have our distance.
It's currently zoned as what?
RE1, and it's proposed to stay there.
Stay there, yeah.
So just to run over a few key points on this subdivision, there is a specific length that a subdivision can go if it has a single access point. In this case, there is a single access point off of Foothill Drive, and there's no other connection as currently designed. There is a planned connection for future phases, but until that goes in, there would only be able to have a maximum of 750 feet in which you could have homes located according to our design standards without special approval. So the lines shown with the dimensions, and I'll zoom in a little here. These dimensions here, where those end at the end of the arrow points, that's the end of the 750. So it wraps around this intersection to the curve. It goes on the east side all the way to the end of that cul-de-sac. And on the west side, it gets to about lot 109. As drawn without special approval, again, that would mean lots 110, 111, 101, and 102 would need to come in at a future date when a secondary connection is made, whether that's to the west down to 600 East crossing the canal, whether that continues south and then at some point connects in west. Once there's another connection and this is no longer a dead end, that's when those lots would able to be divided. So at concept, you look at all the lots, the phasing will come in and the development plan would show only the lots to be built in that case if it's phased, again, without that special approval. Let me flip through and go through just quickly, briefly, the staff report here. So like I said, RE1 zone, there's no rezone being requested. It meets the zoning density for the 11 lots and the minimum widths and frontages. The reports required, and the applicants agreed to provide these reports: soils report. You've got grading and drainage, water conservation. In this case, water conservation, it is located above the canal. The applicant has expressed that there are water shares available for the property. So they're going to try to get permission from the canal company to pump that water up from the canal. In that case, the water conservation would need to just show the system, ensure that the shares can be used, and show approval from the canal company for that pipeline. In the case that it is not, that doesn't pan out, they don't get the water permission to pump above the canal, then there will need to be a water conservation plan similar to the previous subdivision that was discussed, with landscape plan limits on amount of turf, to follow our water conservation plan that is in draft currently, and will be finalized. So yes, that's a brief rundown. Staff would recommend a positive recommendation to the city council with these conditions, that those reports above get completed by a development plan, and the phasing be shown within development plan. All the design standards are used, and the subdivision be recorded by plat when that time comes. I'll go back into the plan so we can.
I missed, did that mention the phasing aspect of it in the conditions on positive recommendation?
No, it was listed earlier in the
Okay.
staff report, but it wasn't listed in the bullet points.
Okay.
And the staff's making recommendation include, how are they dealing with the 750 feet?
Right. The recommendation there is that only the lots within that 750 be built at this time until a secondary access be constructed.
Is that what's being requested?
From the applicant?
Yes.
That's staff's recommendation, I believe, and Nick could maybe speak to this a little bit better. I believe the applicant would prefer that there would be special permission granted for these lots on the east cul-de-sac, that those could go in at one time. The benefit to that would be, obviously, the project would get wrapped up and all in one piece. We wouldn't come back in, say, 10 years and then have somebody try to pick up the loose ends and finish what is started. Maybe it's a different property owner at that time. The negative on that, and the reason staff recommends we do it without including those lots, is you've got to hold a line somewhere. And as soon as you grant permission to go past that 750 in one instance, it gets harder and harder to hold that line in future instances. So where I don't necessarily feel like 4 additional lots in this case would cause a significant concern, I am interested in holding the line on that code and being careful with where we grant special approval.
Yeah, I think we've been burned on that before.
Yeah. Spencer, does the, you indicate some of these lots are half acre.
Correct.
Minimum half acre, but that still meets the criteria for RE1?
Right, and I'll flip over there now. So this is the density determinant method that's being used. I had this pulled up from the last one. Let me move this out of the way and I can bump up the text size for everybody to see. So the RE1 zone, when you get into the density determinant, the minimum lot size turns to this 20,000 square feet. And so they can only go to the density determined by the coefficient here, that 0.9, which is why they have 11 lots on 12 acres. But some of those lots can be smaller, down to 20,000.
Thank you.
What is the minimum size of the lot? What's the smallest lot on here?
Yeah, let me pull over to that concept. I believe they are at 23,741 is their smallest. This top, the north row here on the east side is where you have the smaller lots. They're around 2324. So
So lot 103 's out because of the 750, right? Or they're going to just build on half of it?
So lot 3 would be included because it has 200 feet of frontage that would within that 750. So lot 3 would be 103 would be included. Lot 109 only has about 60 feet of frontage. That could still be included. if there's, so there are a couple different ways. So there's still access. The driveway could still be within that 750. That's one way of logic of including that still. There's also a path of doing a flag lot as a temporary measure. That's actually outlined in our code, where you do a flag lot. It's called a flag lot. You just need at least 20 feet of frontage. And then at a future time when the road goes in, that turns into a standard lot. So under one of those two methods, that 109 could also be included because it has at least 20 feet. But 110, 111, 101, and 102 don't have any frontage in that 750, so would not be included.
So
Spencer, do you have a cursor that you can use to
Oh,
point it out,
yes,
or a
I-
set of binoculars for me?
I apologize.
Over
I
here,
apologize.
can't see the
Put him
numbers.
on your shoulders, lift him up.
So 109 is right here. That's that one. I
Okay.
forget about, I
Oh,
circle it with
we're
my
looking-
cursor every
we keep
time
looking-
and nobody can
looking at
see it.
this one.
Just so you know, if anybody
Pointed
wants
at
to
this
make.
one,
Can you,
Spencer.
could you put it on this?
This one
screen
doesn't
over
work because it's shooting light out. It's a TV
Oh.
screen.
Okay.
So that's 109.
Thank you.
Okay, 109.
These from here, 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 and here, those are the three lots that wouldn't be included.
Okay.
I did speak with the applicant as well. So without that special approval to go to the 750, there may be some interest in rearranging some lots. Some surrounding property owners have interest in potentially purchasing some of these. There may be some ways that you could do some boundary line adjustments, allow property owners to buy these lots, and they don't necessarily have the intent to build on them. They just want to preserve views, so that it could be resituated in a way that the lots left over aren't intended to be built on anyway, and are less impactful. I expressed that if that's the intent, we would probably like that to come back to Planning Commission. So we don't have a plan sent forward tonight that then drastically changes by the time it gets to City Council. And he was willing to do that and work through that and bring it back if there's no special approval for the current plan. Obviously, that's the number one, his number one option would be this plan with the special approval.
So here's two things, Spencer, just looking at the plan and the way it is set up. If the special permission is not granted, does the road end where that arrow ends?
Right.
Okay.
This
It did.
configuration, yeah.
Yeah.
And Alan can correct me if I'm wrong. In our previous discussions, we did discuss that we could have the road continue. It's the homes that couldn't be past that
Okay.
750. So, the applicant and developer, Nick, has expressed that he'd like to get that all done at the same time. Just put the infrastructure in and then leave those lots unplatted. So the roads would be longer, but there would be no homes past that 750 and would
Okay.
still meet that intent.
So the
I-
roads
I-
would be as
So-
they're drawn.
Right. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
roads
there
could
could-
be as drawn.
Without a cul-de-sac at the end though, because the only way for those to become buildable lots is that road's got to continue through.
The road, so the connection, I'll pull out here. So the connection proposed, and Nick has worked with other property owners. We've had meetings with Nick and with the Yonkers actually own property to the south and southwest there. We've had meetings with all of them. To his credit, he has been talking to everybody around there. The proposed connection at this point would go through the Maloof parcel, and that's the end of the Maloof parcel, into the Yonker parcel and potentially across to the canal here. So once that connection is made, this road is no longer a single access road, and those other lots could go in. The other alternative to that is if more land was developed, and I'll zoom out a little. So say more property owners are on board, more land is developed before this connection goes in, and it gets down to say the alignment of 26th, and that is connected there, that would do the same thing. There's obviously a lot more land between those 2 points to make that connection, but the cul-de-sac is not planned to continue and go through on this property. So the cul-de-sac would be constructed as shown. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
And then the
So-
other,
So I have a question about the road.
Mhm.
So that road would go in and it would look like that, and and those lots, if they never get built, there's just this little cul-de-sac road there, right?
Right. So what would happen is in the county records with the plat, these lots here, as shown, if it doesn't get reconfigured, those lots would be just one large remainder parcel. And that would not be buildable. There would not be able to be a building permit issued on that large parcel until the future phase came in and subdivided those lots as shown in this concept plan. So they could,
But there still be that road there.
road would be there. They could potentially stub utilities to where the future lots would be. But that way they wouldn't have to cut into the road when the time came. But it would be one large piece that couldn't be built on. It would need to be split through the development plan and final plat process.
Would the road include the cul-de-sac? Is that going to be?
Yes.
I mean, that would be paved.
It is up to the developer. Nick expressed that he would like to get this all built right at the same time. If he decided, I mean, a lot of phase developments, they'll build just the infrastructure for that phase and they'll wait. So if he determined he would rather do that, he can. He would have to have a temporary turnaround in that case at the end, wherever the road ends. But he could elect to do that. He has expressed a desire to put it all in at once. The city staff is supportive of that. It's a little cleaner, a little less patchwork as well. So, but he has the option to phase the infrastructure.
Yeah, so I mean, as I understand it, it could go anywhere from where the arrow ends now to the end of the cul-de-sac, and that would really be at his discretion, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But whatever decision was made, it would have to be accessible, and fire truck, police, et cetera, and so forth would be able to turn around, and all of the
Correct.
public access available.
Correct.
Okay, tell me, this may be going into the next phase, and if so, tell me to wait. But I'm just thinking, okay, if it goes down to the end, do we need to be worrying about fire hydrants and that sort of infrastructure at this point in time?
Right. That is a good question. Those will need to be shown spaced out for the subdivision as a whole. If the road goes down to the end, I would recommend that all the infrastructure goes with it so that we don't have to cut the road and put that in later. So we wouldn't want to be cutting into a water line in the middle of the road to install a fire hydrant later. So we would want to have that all go in or all wait essentially.
Okay. Any other questions on this? I had one. So say that we approve this all goes through. Is there a scenario under which I've noticed that a lot of the larger lots are the ones that aren't buildable, right? At least those 101, 102. Is there any circumstance under which those are just kind of an excuse to do the smaller lots up there? Do you know what I mean? Like, are we backing ourselves into a corner in terms of just the lots that are buildable are those smaller ones?
Yeah, if we can't consider the whole thing as a whole, do we still meet things with the density?
Right.
Because we're basically saying, yeah, they're here on paper, but they're not really. They're not going to be recorded as such.
Right. I think at the end of the day, if these 2-3 lots don't get built, and even though they're a little bigger, the 101 is 1.39, and that's this one right here. The 102 is 1.03, so just barely over an acre. So at the end of the day, there's 12 acres in here and 11 lots shown. If 2 or 3 lots don't get built, then 9 lots will be constructed on essentially 12 acres. I don't see an impact at just having 2 less lots. In that case, say they took this land out of it and they had 9 acres or about 9 acres, they'd still be at approximately that. Maybe you have 1 additional lot, but I don't see a tremendous exploitation of the density determinant system in this case.
Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion on this then. I think we're at that point.
And staff is making a positive recommendation. on
Correct.
this As it sits.
Okay, remind me one last time, there was one other thing, Lindsay, you brought up that was not in the bulleted list at the bottom.
The phasing. So it's in the staff
Phasing.
recommendations, but it's not in the summary.
Correct.
But I think it has the same
It's
effect.
theirs,
Mhm.
okay, all right. All right, I would make a motion then for a positive recommendation of the concept plan for this subdivision has been outlined, including the staff recommendations as made in the report.
All right, do we have a second?
I just want to make sure that the phasing's included in that.
Yeah, that's what we were just speaking about.
Okay.
But Spencer,
Okay.
if you want to just show
Show us.
him.
You can,
Show us
yeah,
the
you
phasing.
you can add that in if you'd like. I will,
Well, as long as it's just clear, I just want to
Yep.
make sure everybody's
me-
clear what.
let me bump this up here. So this is the line of code. Right, or the line in the staff report. This is not code correction there. This is the line in the staff report that would be basically included if you include the staff report there.
Could you just put that as part of the bullet points?
Yeah.
Just so that it's noted.
Yes.
And then, so can we just kind of add that on to,
Uh-huh.
yeah, to Eric's motion? And then can I, is that, you got that, Marie? Okay.
Yes.
And then do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Jeff will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right. We will
Oh,
move.
wait, did you get your letter
She
recommended?
didn't get to read it.
Can we just do that virtually? I read in that email. Can you put it under this one?
Oh,
Marie, I will forward you that email.
yeah. This wasn't a public
Yeah,
hearing.
so we're good. Okay. I had one shot and I missed it. Okay. Consideration and possible recommendation of a concept plan for a subdivision of approximately 10 acres located at approximately 200 west, 2100 north, parcel 04-080-0015. The proposed subdivision includes 5 commercial lots in the CG zone and is being proposed to be subdivided using the commercial industrial subdivision provisions.
Yes.
All right, Spencer, yeah, can you explain this one?
Yes, so this parcel of land is right on the edge of our city. We've got our city boundary that comes just north of this car dealership here. This 10-acre parcel that I'm outlining is the one in question. It's along 200 west, and it is in our general commercial zone. I'll flip over quickly to the concept there. It's a pretty straightforward concept plan.
Spencer, will you hold on?
Yes.
Can we just have you take conversations out to the hall for me? Just so that we can hear Spencer. Thank you.
So pretty straightforward concept plan. You have the 4 commercial lots up on this top 5 acres. The lower 5 acres is all one lot, and that's proposed to be storage units. There is an additional agenda item just after this one for the conditional use permit for those storage units. That is a conditional use in the general commercial zone. Right now, we're considering just the subdivision. They showed that the storage units in there just for your information, essentially. I'll flip over to the staff report quickly and go through that. In the commercial zone, there's not necessarily a density or lot size requirement. So it's just ensuring essentially that the correct studies are performed and that the information needed in the development plan is required. So no rezone is requested for this area. It's still going to be general commercial. The development plans have been discussed in a pre-application. There are some utility questions on where sewer is. They'll have to go north to 200 and then water. There are a couple different options that they'll have to work through and they're having their engineers look at that. That will come in the development plan. As far as studies to be required, we will need a grading and drainage plan as with every subdivision, water conservation plan. If there's secondary, we will require that for exterior water. If there's culinary, we will require conservation standards on the landscape. Soils plan to be required, specifically looking at the water table in that case, which is related to stormwater. It's doesn't have many geotechnical issues there. Transportation wise, it's pretty low impact, and there's no open space as part of this. So after all the review and staff review, staff does give a positive recommendation to this subdivision as shown with the current layout. And I will flip back over to that concept for discussion.
Okay, so, and these, we just changed the storage unit ordinance.
Correct.
This complies with all of that.
Yes. So I passed that on to the
Okay.
applicant. They've been really good at watching that. They don't have a landscape plan. We'll talk more about this in the next
Sure,
stage.
right.
But yeah, the orientation, the setbacks all fit what we determined in our code.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? We're a little fatigued, I think.
The land to the south, that's land. There's not a road that's on the south of the.
Correct. So on the south of it, that's our Logan city boundary there.
Okay.
So that's the North Logan boundary right
Right,
there.
okay.
And there's land to the south. The commercial zone has a 0 lot line
Yeah.
in North Logan.
Yeah.
So they don't have a setback. They could be right on the border.
Okay. Nan, do you have something? All right, I would entertain a motion on this then.
I move that we give a positive recommendation to, what do we call this one? To the concept plan for a subdivision at 200 West, 2100 North, parcel, all this stuff.
Yeah, that's probably good. If you say concept plan for
Okay.
the parcel.
Okay, do we have a
And along
second?
with the staff, staff suggestions.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Dwight, seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will move on to the final item, consideration and possible approval of a conditional use permit application for storage units located at approximately 200 West, 2100 North in the general commercial zone. So
Okay.
Spencer, yeah, just flesh this one out for us.
Yeah, I'll stay here on this concept plan. So this is the conditional use permit approval. This is not a recommendation. This is approval of the use. This only applies to the south end. So with our, I'll actually flip over to the memo here really quickly. With our code as we had written it and proposed, they did get a copy and they did follow that code. They're further than the required 330 feet from Main Street. The units are oriented correctly. As far as the landscape, that is the one condition that staff recommends on this. Is that in the next phase, so they will be required to come before the design review committee and provide a site plan and a landscape plan as part of their development regulations. They didn't complete a landscape plan. They're still kind of under contract, working out this real estate deal right now. They've expressed that they're willing to have that landscape plan ready and have it meet all our requirements as outlined. We recommend that approval of this conditional use permit be made conditional on that landscape plan being found to meet this code as determined by staff and the design review committee.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, do I have a motion on this or any discussion?
I move that we give a
Grant.
positive recommendation.
granting.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're
it's
granting.
approval. Yeah.
Yes,
Or
we're
approving.
granting approval
Mhm.
to all of this.
Okay,
With
we're
condition-
relying on
With-
you tonight,
With
Marie.
the staff's suggestions for the landscape plan.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jeff seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. We did it.
All right.
We're packing as much as we can into these last two meetings of the year.
Yes.
Okay, so Spencer, any staff business or discussion?
Yes, only one thing. So the city council in their meeting last time, they changed their December meeting. They decided to only have one meeting on the 15th. They changed that to the 8th of December, which is next week. We have this meeting scheduled just completely due to me being out and not able to make it to our last one. I appreciate the commission being flexible with that. We had planned to meet on the 16th. Normally, I would follow the city council to condense our meetings, but I don't know if a week between meetings is enough time to give both applicants and staff be able to get the material ready and to be able to notice different things. So I wanted to leave that up to discussion to Planning Commission to see who would be in town for the 16th, if we'd still be looking to hold a meeting then, or if we want to shift to City Council, which again might be a little tight, or if people are going to be out of town, not able to make it.
What kind of things do we have coming up for that 16th? Do you have a sense?
Right. So potentially, as of now, we do have ordinances we need to wrap up. So we do have a couple ordinances that would be good to get back in front of the Planning Commission. Also, if that subdivision that was discussed today has any changes, any major changes, they decide to come back and realign where that 750 ends. I'm talking about agenda item 3. They would like to be on that 16th meeting agenda likely. So those are the main things.
I'll be gone next week. So I can.
Yeah, I'll say that for me, I'd planned on that 16th regardless. And
Okay.
and I'd really just, since that would be my last meeting, I'd prefer to just go in strong as we plan for the 16th
Okay.
and end
As
with a
opposed
whimper.
to-
As opposed
As
to
opposed
just
to-
saying we're done,
Yeah.
limping out the door. Just my 2 cents.
I'll
Who?
second that.
Wow. So is everyone going to be able to make it on the 16th?
I'm fine. with
Okay.
that either.
Let's just stick with that then.
Okay.
That's been the plan all along.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else, Spencer?
No, nothing from
Okay,
me.
anything from the commission? Okay,
I guess
then-
one thing.
oh, go
sorry,
ahead,
Nick-
Eric.
Nick had brought up earlier that it's, and I'm not sure that it's a discrepancy, but he had talked about the difference in some of the zoning between the frontage that was listed,
Mhm.
depending on the way that it was listed.
Yeah,
And-
I
and
can,
if-
with
I
the-
can flip
with the
over there
densities.
and explain that. So for the different methods, the minimum lot size changes, also with that, the width changes and the setbacks change. So you take the density determinant method, and this is what he was referring to. RE1, RE2, and RE5 are right here, and I'll try to bump this up as much as I can. I can't go any further. Those are all 100 in the density determinant method. He was wanting to use the standard subdivision because that doesn't account and subtract the non-buildable land. In that case, it goes 100, 250, 300. So that standard subdivision width was the only one we were changing. The density bonus, similarly, 100, 100, and 100 for RE1, RE2, and RE5. So that's what he was referring to. Not necessarily a discrepancy. It's a needed width change because those lot sizes can get smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Good, good.
Second.
Okay, I believe, was that Dwight?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Be on the 16th.
No.
Thanks, Jeff.
We're meeting with him in person tomorrow, 3 to 5. So at the end of the day, so Monday, you don't hear from us early on. Which we'll reach out to.
You're welcome.
We'll go
Yep.
from 3 to the end of the day.
Put it to use there.
So we're going down to his office for a couple hours. We have a couple different items.
Donations slip to give you, I'll get it to you. I'll get it the next week.
Yeah. I'm hoping
Sure,
he'll
yeah.
get, what we need to get from him is something in writing. So I'm hoping by Monday or Tuesday, at the latest, I can send over a memo in his writing with his signature on it, rather than my work. Development requirements. So change under this new ordinance and just under our code. So what what parts of the roads need to be improved, where's the access from. We're just want to hear from our legal counsel what his opinion is, get it in writing. And if there's a discrepancy there between his and Daniel Watkins, we'll have to work that out at that point.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that, Dave. I can bring it up in these items when we say, other business.
Yeah, Gray Wilson has sent over, so when he submitted the application, it didn't, right, it would be better if it was a little more refined. And had the widths and it's pretty much a survey base. And I know Gray Wilson.
Yeah,
I know he
yeah.
has it. So it'd be pretty easy for him. And he's working with. So he should be able to get that together for the meeting. And that's what we'd want to see. That'll be the best thing to present. Yeah, and you can. Concept plan's pretty simple. So the application's filled out. That's the one thing, and then that concept plan's the second. And you can see with this. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So something like that, and typically we'll have like dimensions on those.
Donating this to
Yes.
float rider.